Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second generation Search and Rescue Aviation Programme, UKSAR2G Data Modelling Questions and Answers session. My name is John Foster. I'm the Aviation Programme Analyst, and I'll be running you through today's session. But before we kick off, I'll just start with a few housekeeping points. I think many of you will have seen this slide several times over the last few months, but please remember to bear with us if there are any delays switching between slides. This particular session will be run on PowerPoint, as well as Microsoft Power BI and several Google Chrome work pages. So I do need to flick between various sharing pages. We're recording the event, including the presentation slides, so those will be available after the event. Please feel free to ask questions and use the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of Microsoft Teams, and we'll get to the questions at the end of the presentation. All questions will be answered in the Q&A session, and feel free to submit throughout the presentation as they pop into your minds. Please note, if you leave the event during the presentation, you might not be able to rejoin. There appears to be a technical issue occasionally with Microsoft Teams. So again, many of you will have seen this disclaimer, but I'll read it verbatim as is required. The MCA is providing its current strategy on various aspects of the proposed procurement and current information. However, the MCA reserves the right to amend and update its strategy and all information at any time before the formal launch of a procurement process. MCA has no liability for the accuracy, adequacy or completeness of any information. MCA has no liability for any costs or expenses of any party. MCA reserves the right to keep a record of any queries and to circulate such queries to interested parties. So then the presentation this morning, I'll be speaking for approximately 30 minutes or so. We have allowed 90 minutes, which would give us up to 60 minutes of questions and answers if required. So please feel free to keep those questions coming in as you think of them. We'll move on now to look at the application requirements for the simulation model and the process itself. Much of this information has already been provided on the government website. I'm just going to provide a few points of clarity to make sure everyone understands exactly what's required. So the application process itself requires several bits of information to be emailed into the SAR2G.data.modelling@mcga.gov.uk email address. And there are a few prerequisites for individuals who are applying for an application. On the government website, it states that the baseline personal security screening is required. Just to reiterate, that is a government security screening process. The equivalent for your organisations will be your pre-employment checks for your requisite companies, which most likely meet the British standard 7858:2019. You'll also require the Duo mobile application to be installed on your mobile device. That provides multi-factor authentication and is required every time you look to log into the simulation portal itself. We have security operating procedures that need to be agreed prior to the account being approved. That includes a data notice and is included within the email application. And finally, it does state that UK IP addresses are required to access the tool. There is a workaround for non-UK IP addresses. There is an additional cost which we were not aware of, and so we will be limiting the number of non-UK IP addresses that we can issue, but I'll discuss more about those most likely with individuals on a case-by-case basis as they identify non-IP users. And a final request or bit of advice. Please continue to check your junk email folders for the email address in red at the bottom. That's sar2g@vivace.tech. That is the organisation that is sending out the completed applications. We've sent out a fair number already, but only had a few returns on those applications. So we suspect that emails may be sitting in junk accounts. So please look at those ones as soon as you can. Thank you very much. So the process itself is quite simple, as outlined on the government website. Please email the address in blue, and please do that by individual, not by company. You're allowed up to 4 account holders per organisation. So please, those up to 4 individuals should email individually that email address. It will make the application process just a little bit smoother. Once you've emailed that, it will sit in, your email will essentially be processed initially, and you'll receive an email with additional information requirements that you need to provide. So please return the information as requested, which includes the completion of the SIOPS agreement, and then await for your account details to be sent through. And within that, there'll be a user simulation guide with your login instructions. So once you receive the final email from vivace.tech, there'll be various instructions within it and various attachments. Probably the most important one initially will be the simulation guide, as you can see up on the screen. So ultimately, we have our contents page, which clearly outlines everything within the document. As it quite obviously states, start with how to set up the application. So I'll quickly run through this and breeze over the headings, but pulling out the relevant bits that you need to be aware of. So obviously this is page 1, which runs you through creating the account, accessing the app, and provides you with various bits of troubleshooting. There are 5 troubleshooting bullet points that you can see on the bottom right. If those troubleshooting points don't resolve the issue, you will also have a means by which you can communicate with the vivace.tech team, and they'll be able to assist you further. That's both on the phone and by email itself. Moving on then, there's some instructions on how to use the asset type area of the page. Now, I know many of you, or some of you should I say, will have supported the testing phase. So this area of the simulation tool won't come as a surprise to you. The tool itself is built on a JavaScript, is very user-friendly, very intuitive. All information that you input on asset types and on base types will be validated in the evaluation process by the tech team, where they will be expecting you to provide evidence on how you will achieve the various data inputs. For example, your cruising speed, your casualty capacity, or your endurance. I'll move on now. Very similar content for the bases. We're looking here for the name of the base, the latitude, longitude, in order to correctly locate on the map within the simulation tool. There's some guidance on how to create a submission. You have the ability within the submissions area to submit according to a single or individual lot, as well as a combination of all 3. And simply within this area, you decide which submission you're working for, lots 1, 2, 3, or a combination. You allocate the asset type to the base location, and you create your submission. This will run through, and at this point, the data that you input is sent off-site to cloud-based server, where it runs the computation for approximately 5 to 10 minutes or so. So you've got time to go away, get a cup of tea, and come back before the computation is complete. You may have to use your refresh button in the top left-hand screen after 10 minutes, just to see the status move or change from running to completed. So just be aware of that one, please. Once the simulation has completed, you'll be provided with some headline results. The key metrics are up here on screen, as you can see, but they're also on tooltips within the simulation for ease of reference. But I won't labour that point now. There's further details on the initial insights that the simulation provides you outside of Power BI. And again, you can look at the different options that we have based on the permutations and ranges that we've calculated as well as a brief overview against hospital transfers and police searches, as well as search and rescue themselves. And then finally, within the tool, there will be the data set overview, and my screen appears to have gone a little blank, I'm afraid. So what I'll do now, I'll move on to the login page for the simulation tool, of which you will receive a hyperlink within your application email. So once you've got your account details, you'll be presented with a blue screen. I'm just going to go into my mobile phone now. I click on the Duo dual factor authentication app, which I have to set up the same account within it. When I click on the login button, I will receive a request for which I must approve the request, at which point the system will log in. And that must be done every time you're looking to log in. You're logged in for up to 2 hours beyond last use, and there is no log out function. So just please bear that one in mind. So I'll start at the beginning, and remember, when you're using this, please for the first few times reference back to the simulation guide. But your first screen essentially is what we see on the screen, and just for clarity, please ensure that you check your user information. So on the top right button, head to the update user or edit user area and provide the correct information according to yourself and your organization. Ensure you press the update button, of course, and then back to the inputs. So this is the basis of the tool itself, and what you can see on screen are various entries under the asset type. Now I'm going to flick across to the right hand side, and in the right column under default MCA asset, you'll see 3 green ticks. Those green ticks against the lot 1 default, 2 default and 3 defaults will already be in your system when you log in. Likewise with the bases, and I'll touch on the bases later. So as you can see, there's various bits of information based on the assets by lot themselves. To add to the asset list, please simply click the Add New button, provide the information as requested within the pop-up tab, select the appropriate aircraft category, and make sure that in the unavailable time per year in hours box, you add 0. Please add 0 in that area. Click your submission button, and you will have your asset created, as you can see on screen. Now you can do that as many times as you like for as many different assets as you have, and once you're content that you have the right asset configuration, you can move on to onto your bases. There is the option to duplicate and change assets or change asset data within that if you wish, or to delete. So hopefully those 2 functions will save a little bit of time or allow you to correct any errors that you may have made. So I'll move onto the bases, and as you can see, starting on the right hand side, we have the default MCA base configuration ticked in green, and then from the left we've got the base names and the latitude longitude data. As with the asset types, click your new asset, provide the information as requested. There are some sort of control measures put in place to ensure that the base is located within the UK, and then submit accordingly. Once you're happy, you've got all your bases that you're looking to run the computation through, move on to the submission box. As before, you'll be looking to create a new submission. So if you click on the Add button, up the submission box will pop. Ultimately, you've got your buttons on the top for lots 1, 2 and 3. Label your submission according to your own naming convention. and I've selected lot 1 in this case. So I'm going to put my lot 1 assets in the bases that I would like to have lot 1 assets. I'm just doing this randomly in no particular order for demonstration purposes only. What you'll see is I haven't added any lot 2 or lot 3 assets, but of course if you wish to do that, you do that in exactly the same manner, but I'm going to remove them for the demonstration purposes, and I'm then going to click submit. At the moment the status is currently set to submitted, and we can see that there's some headline information about this particular option. We're lot 1 only, we're not lot 2 or 3 as suggested. We have 8 bases and 12 assets. Now if I click, I'll go back to that again. If I click on the blue line again, it opens up the view submission page. What you'll see here is an overview. Clearly it's the lot 1 Q&A demo. It's for lot 1 only. And what you can see on the right hand side are the lot 1 assets that you have selected by base in white, running down the page. In yellow or in beige, you can see that the model has applied the MCA default lot 2 and lot 3 assets according to the MCA default configuration. This allows, in this case, lot 1 users the ability to run their submissions with a default lot 2 and lot 3 capability overlaid on top to understand how that lot 1 submission would work. However, if obviously if you had selected all 3 lots, you wouldn't have any beige coloured boxes, and all asset boxes would be white according to your submission laydown. So at the moment the status is submitted. I'll just do a quick refresh, and at this point, this is where you need to wait, put the kettle on, get a cup of tea, and come back. But I won't bother with that for now. But that will eventually turn to running once the server accepts the submission and then completed or finished. Sorry, once it's run its numbers. You can then move on to the headline results, which gives you some very basic high-level information. And it will stack up down the page depending on the number of simulations that you run. You can see that we have some tooltips against each of the headings. Those cross-reference back to the simulation guide for ease of access. They're contained within. Now again, as with submissions, if you click on the blue line, it will load up and bring up a few more insights within the tool itself, and you can run through these. There's the guidance in the simulation guide pack, which explains exactly what everything is. The permutations here at the top. What we have done is use the historical data to create permutation A, permutation B. They are 2 representative future years, which is 2022. And then that gives you a range. So this is just to provide you with an understanding of how your simulation is likely to run in a future world against synthetically generated data of our historical collected data from HMCG. We've also got some information about the historical results, which you can run through compared against the 3 years of data that we have available. We've looked at hospital transfers as well, so we have some baseline data as well, but we've also looked at how your simulations or your computations will work against 100 and 300% increase, both for hospital transfers and police transfers. So that's assuming that our workload and support to other agencies outside of the MCA and the Coast Guard increased by those numbers. And then finally on this page, we have some numbers linked to search and rescue, which gives you your baseline as before, but a 20 and 40% increase in search and rescue activity. We clearly don't need to increase search and rescue activity by as much as the police and the medical transfers due to the baseline volume of incidents that we work on an annual basis. So I'll click back to inputs. Once you're happy that you've got your numerous submissions, however many you want, you'll then look to export the data. So you export the data, click the download button, and a little box will pop up as you'd expect. Now this is going to share to a different screen. So once your download has run, in this particular case, I've already saved it within SharePoint. So I'll open up the folder now, and these are the document types and ranges that you'll receive within that data download. You can see there are numerous CSV files. There's a Power BI PBIX file, that's your dashboard as labeled, more CSV files, and then there's the export guide itself. So that provides the final bit of information available from the tool itself. First thing to do, please, is to open up the export guide, the README guide, and as with the simulation guide, clearly go through the document and follow the instructions. What it is doing is providing instructions simply on how to load up the Power BI tool itself within your computer itself. Now, what Power BI doesn't do very well, we have had to use some R scripting in order to work around. So there are some instructions in here on how you install R. Make sure you follow these instructions and load these in. If you don't, there are several R scripts within the Power BI report that won't work. If you can't follow the instructions, it's unsuccessful. Remember, we do have the Vivace tech team on hand that can provide you with some guidance by email or telephone to support. So as with any user guide, simply follow the setup process from 1 down to 10, from front to back. And that will give you all the information you require in order to access Power BI. But I won't labour the export guide any further. Once you've successfully installed Power BI onto your system, I'm currently looking at it through the online portal, which you can either do yourself or you can access the desktop app. But as you can see, I'm currently on the online version. So I'm going to click on the home button, and this is what you should find straight away. So a little bit of prose on the left-hand side with the last reported update and version control number. Some ribbons along the top, which we'll get to in a moment, and 3 buttons top left. Clearly the home button will bring you back to this page. The information button can be clicked on at any time when you're in the report. And it will provide you with various bits of information, as the name suggests, according to the page that you're on at that time. And then the back button or the back arrow will return you one page as you'd expect. And finally, we also have some additional filters here on the right-hand side. They are there simply because we couldn't get every filter we required inside every report in the dashboard itself. So I'll start with the bidders button. The information provided on this page is very simple for you as individuals. It will be yourself, and it will be everything that you saw on the front page of your simulation tool, as well as your submissions to date. So you, as a user, should only see your own submissions, or will only see your own submissions according to your data export. Once the procurement program progresses to ITT and those at the ITT stage are requested to make a submission, those submissions will ultimately be sent through to the MCA, and we, the MCA, will see all of the submissions on this one page here. There are some filters which you may or may not need on this particular page, so I'll move straight on to the deployment button. As you can see, this provides the mapping and overview of your submission to include the range rings on the right-hand side. So very simply, we have a Power BI map on the left, and we have buttons or locations for base locations. You can see here at Aberdeen, we've got a split colour, grey and green. The grey, I believe, is the rotary wing. It is, and if you hover over, we have a nice tooltip to confirm what is at that location. Likewise, if you hover over the green, that is for your or for fixed wings within the system. And again, the tooltip is there. A bit of an overview of the deployment, and then this image on the right-hand side is the first R script. You can see the various range rings, the concentric range rings, according to the legend at the top. However, it needs to be noted that if you have a lot 1 and lot 2 asset at a given location, the R script will identify the larger range ring for assuming the lot 2 asset, and only visualize that range ring. It won't do the smaller range ring, and that's a scripting issue or a limitation of the system. So the way to get around that, if I were to select Aberdeen against the default model, it's come up quite quickly. We can see the fixed wing and the rotary wing. However, if I move into lot 1 only, we can see the smaller concentric circle for a lot 1 asset. That rendered quite quickly. It's not normally that fast. Sometimes you'll find a wagon wheel of doom up in the top left of the R scripted visuals, and you just need to be patient for about 5-10 seconds or so whilst it runs through that custom visualization. And if you did require it, there are additional filters again on the right hand side, which you may wish to use at any stage. And I'll just clear the filters as we go. Moving on to the second ribbon then, statistics. This gives a little bit more detail about your submission. You can see we've got the categories, aircraft categories, and the assets by base, as well as the casualty capacities and then asset details. So this really is a page just to confirm which submission you are looking at, and whether or not it's actually correct. If you've provided multiple submissions at the same time, we have the submission filter in the top right. So click on the submission that you're looking for, and then make your analysis against that submission. If I move on, the final tab is the detail, and this just draws out a little bit more of the information that you put into the simulation tool, specifically the bases, with the casualty capacity and the longitude and latitude information. Right, so I'll move on now, please, to the incident ribbon. The incident ribbon here is synthetically generated data that was created on the historical data that the MCA's collected for for 3 years. So it's post transition. It's for all 10 bases, and this is an appropriate forward-looking data set based on our historical data. So there are no real incidents in here. They are all generated based on incidents that have been have taken place in the last 3 years, or from the 3-year data set, should I say. So clearly you've got your map on the left. We have a tooltip capability to hover over and extract various bits of information you may wish. And you have your sort of zoom in, zoom out capability, or you have it on your mouse as well. So nice and interactive. Be aware that we do have incidents at significant ranges to the west of Scotland and the southwest approaches. So sometimes, depending on how Power BI filters the map, you may actually lose incidents off to the left. So just be careful and make sure to double check over the Western Isles and the southwest approaches. The report itself provides you with some high-level numbers for incidents and casualties. against the incident types. We've got the day and night capability. We've got the stakeholders involved, the domains of all the incidents, and all of these are interactive. So if you're interested in med transfers, simply click on the med transfer button, and the numbers pop up as you can see them. You can also change the filters on the right hand side. So if you're now interested in med transfers by casualties, not by incidents, you can click on the button and you can see that the med transfer casualties are 309 versus the incidents of 333, and that would be based on incidents that were actually completed versus those that were cancelled at some stage prior to a casualty being allocated to that or onboarded to that aircraft. The tab down the bottom, the distribution down the bottom, is all about predictive completion states. So we are predicting within this incident that just over 2,000 incidents should be completed, and several hundred will be terminated at some stage, either en route, on scene, or prior to launch. And again, that's based on the historical data collected by the ARCC. Again, don't forget, we do have additional filters down here on the right hand side. So if you're interested to filter further on the page, or maybe apply filters on all pages in the entire dashboard, then you have your selection there on the right. We can move on to the statistics tab, which just provides a little bit more information about these synthetic incidents. We maintain the numbers at the top, but we can see the distributions by hour of the day, by month of the year, and also by casualties allocated to the rescue asset, the aviation rescue asset itself. And then we have distributions by time at the bottom. We can see here that there are quite a lot of incidents with 0 minutes. If we filter that out, obviously we change the distribution visualization according to whatever you want to look at. Now remember, we have the filters up on the right hand side. These synthetic incidents are registered against permutation A. We do have various other scenarios with which we can look at. So, for example, where we had the hospital transfers for 100% increase, this will provide you with the incidents as they look according to an increase with hospital transfers of 100 or 300%, depending on which one you select. As standard, I recommend permutation A for your primary analysis, and then move around the scenarios as you see fit. And again, there's guidance for all of these scenarios within the documentation. So the next few ribbons are based on medical transfers and rescue recovery incidents. We can see here a bright blue map on the left. Again, this is an R scripted visual, so it may take a few moments to run. The page is interactive, as you'd expect, with the rest of the document. And as you can see, the wagon wheel is currently running up in the top left. It's taken a while, but now we can see the point-to-point travel for this particular incident that I've highlighted. Where we have tables on the model, it might not be particularly reader friendly, so you may wish to look at the focus mode, which you can find at the top right of any table. That will bring you into a excuse me, into a new page for which obviously you just have a slightly easier time of reading that particular tabular data set. I'll move on to the rescue recoveries, and in exactly the same way as the med transfers, we have the data for rescue recoveries. It's whirring away, doing its business, and it provides the visual as you can see. Again, if you If you wish to use the focus mode, you can obviously move off into your different page. And then finally, we have the details themselves. So this is very much where the focus mode will be a lot more useful for you, getting everything up on one screen. And this is, as you'd expect, the detail of all of the synthetic incidents. Now, remember, I didn't say this earlier, but these synthetic incidents do not have any form of response overlaid on top of it. So this is the historical data or the synthetic data from the historic data that we have created that allows you to understand a standard year for the MCA. So we'll move on to the response tab. Now, this is where your submission is overlaid with that previous incident data. And this really gives us the bulk of the analysis that you will most likely be interested in. So we have a secondary ribbon label, as you can see, which allows us to understand a quick overview of the response, but on top of incidents. We can compare that against the current deployment, against the baseline deployment. There are some headline results, some flying hour numbers, and some maps. So at the moment, you can see that I'm currently selecting submission default lots 1, 2, and 3 baseline. When I click on baseline, I'll get zeros across the board because it's comparing like with like. If I were to change that and look at the ACE configuration as they've inputted it, we can see some changes in the data itself. I'll stick with the baseline for now. So we have our current deployment. So this is comparing your submission or this submission against the current UKSAR2G model. We're looking at asset usage differences. So we're up by 6.76. We're looking at average distances, both median, response distances here. So median distances to incident of the first asset and median response times. We're then looking at the closest base responding and the differences for that, as well as the differences with casualty rescues as well. I've done the deployment, so I'll move on to the headline results. This really is simply the information as taken from your simulation tool. So when you look at it in focus mode, that is a cut and paste from the simulation model in the JavaScripted portal that I showed you earlier. Flying hours, very important. This allows us to understand the breakdown of flying hours that the model is predicting. We're predicting, we can see that we've got our 11 bases, our 3 types, and 15 assets deployed. Headline figures for total time on scene and total flying time. This is across all 3 lots. So remember that. Occasionally, you may find that a scenario is deselected and you have all scenarios visualized on there. Clearly, you can see the flying hours go up to 92,600, which is obviously not what we fly on an annual basis. So just remember to double check your submission, make sure it's the correct submission that you're analysing, and then select initially permutation A, historic permutation A, to get the figures, the initial figures that you'll be looking for. The document or the page remains interactive, so you can click on lot 1 rapid response as per the submission that I made earlier, and it provides you with a breakdown of flying hours according to the submission that was put in place, and simply click off and it will change. If you wish to look at the flying hours by time on scene and transit time, you've got a nice little tooltip, but you've also, remember, got your additional filters. So you may wish to look at flying hours according to the ambulance trust, for which you need to go into the advanced filters on the right select ambulance only, and watch the interaction change. We have a map view next in line, which you'll have seen from previous tabs. We have numerous bits of information under the tooltips about the incident detail and the response detail. The one I pulled up, the incident, has you can see there it states it's a rescue recovery, and typically I've identified an issue where no casualties rescued, so I'll take that one away and look for it and rectify that. But we can see that we have numerous multiple coloured or two-tone buttons that will provide you with your rotary and your fixed wing responses under the tooltips themselves, and we have our filters as required. So if you just want to look at one of your base locations, again, use the filter, and it will provide you with some basic headline numbers according to that particular submission. I think I've said it before already, but just remember, sometimes Power BI doesn't always show you the incidents out to the west. It seems to capture about 98% of incidents in the primary window, and then leaves 3, 4, 5 of them off to the west. So just remember to have a quick check to make sure you've seen as far west as you want to see. So the statistics tab just provides a bit more insight into everything you might be looking for, we hope. So we've got our distance to incident metrics by lots, by median and by mean. We have our closest base tasks, which again, as you'd expect, remain interactive. And again, incidents attended by lots, casualties rescued by lots. And then we've got some distributions of time and distance at the bottom. We have another R script running in the middle, so you need to be patient again when logging in. In fact, I'm just going to go back one page, apologies. Incidents attended, we can see here 241 unattended. That's the model identifying incidents that are out of range. All aircraft are unavailable on tasks, or the incident itself should be, as classified, terminated en route, on scene, or on the ground. So it's saying 241. However, when we click on the tab, you can see there's only 11. What you need to do is look at I think it's the terminated state, and if I add the filters back in, it jumps back up to 241, and that will include all of those terminated en route, on the ground, or on scene. So that's just a little quick tip on why some of the numbers vary based on the default filters that we've applied. So you can see here in the central picture the concentric rings applied according to the unattended incidents as the model has identified. Now, some you can see are very close into shore, this particular med transfer. If we highlight, we get the tooltip, and then when we hover over the base locations on the left-hand side, we get some further information as to why those bases are not able to attend these incidents. Some are clearly within the concentric rings, but again, for example, here, Stornoway may well be on task, as you can see, on mission, out of range. So what it's essentially doing is the model is saying that in this case the asset that is in range can't attend because it's on another task. So this particular page will be examined thoroughly in the evaluation process, and we'll be looking to identify your mitigations for how you would attend these particular incidents with your configurations. And then finally, as with the previous page, you've got all the detail. So you've got your focus mode. You get a huge tabular presentation, much easier to read on the focus mode than before. And again, as with the rest of the document, you've got your tooltips, you've got your filters, and you've got your interactive buttons, as you'd expect. So the final tab is the comparison tab. Now this is going to be useful for yourself once you start to whittle down the number of options that you believe you want to consider in more detail. So what we have here is up to we can get up to 4 submissions on this page. At the moment, it's selected all 4. Hypothetically, you want to compare. You want to compare 2. So you select those 2. Up they come, and they provide you with some of the high-level overview information that you saw previously, just allowing you to compare submission A with submission D, or whatever your options are. This will also be used by the MCA when comparing bidder A with bidder C, for example. That really runs through the entire dashboard itself. I'll remind you again about the information tab. It works on every page. So if there are any questions, first port of call to the information tab, and then maybe to the simulation guide or the export guide. And we have the back button and the home page itself. Okay, so there was the Tech Team webinar on the 8th of October, and I believe 3 questions were asked and deferred to this stage. So before I get to your Q&A, the answers were handed out, or sorry, the questions were handed over to me. So I've put the answers up on the screen. When will the first ASV historic data be provided to industry on completion of the data model application process? And we've run through that already in Power BI under the incidents tab, as you saw. How many hours from historical data are each lot being provided to other agencies? How will this change going forward? The answer to that is really based on the filter that's applied within the flying hours according to the agency. So at this moment in time, we the MC haven't provided a set number of flying hours by lot to another agency, but you can identify how many are being forecast to be used by other agencies. And then finally, an availability requirement, e.g. 98% was fundamental part of SAR-H and ASV. What is your requirement for 2G? Well, we're looking at alternative metrics, and they'll be outlined in further 2G engagement events. So I'll be deferring on that one. And now, if I may, I'm going to hand over the questions to be asked by Neil to myself, as I can't see them directly on my screen due to the PowerPoint. So Neil, if you're there, could you start with the questions as per the tab on the right hand side, please?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Neil Grant. I'm the UKSAR2G Programme Director. Apologies if you can't see my face. I've got an issue with my camera, but anyway, that doesn't stop me from talking. So we'll crack on, John, if you don't mind. So first question which is coming is why is Aberdeen a default base?
Yeah, good question. So it's maybe default is the wrong language, but what we have to do within both the modelling, operational and financial modelling, is provide a baseline. So Aberdeen, as with the other bases, have ultimately been arbitrarily selected based on the MCA's phase 1 insight analysis. So essentially what we have been looking for is primarily to understand the future costs, and in order to understand the likely future costs, or the should costs, we have had to apply various basing assumptions. Now those assumptions are not contained within the requirements document, and the MCA remains agnostic to base locations and asset types. but we do have to have a baseline in order to make our initial assessment, and that specifically in that model is why Aberdeen has been selected.
But just building on John, that's not to say that Inverness can't be displayed as a default option as well.
No, we can display any number of bases, you know, as default options, but we have displayed those. But again, we remain agnostic to the base locations, and of course, remember this was a demonstration, but we do have our 3 lots and our 10 bases, or 11 bases, sorry, that we put in, which very much is supported should cost modelling.
Okay, thank you, John. Next question is, can you bulk import assets, bases and scenarios?
Yes, is the answer. If you have multiple assets and multiple base queries, you need to upload those into your asset and base areas within the submission tool. You then move on to your submission tab, and you can create numerous or multiple submissions, 5, 10, 15. Once you have those 15 or so submissions, once the status moves to finished, you can then go to the data export, which will export all the data for those 15 submissions. You then upload your Power BI file as per the instructions, and then on the right hand side of your Power BI report, you'll see the scenarios or the submissions filter at the top. You should then, under the submissions, see all 15 as per your entries from the submission tool. I hope that answers the question as it was intended.
Thank you, John. Next one. What does amber and green mean on the results page?
The colours have been selected according to DFT brand guidelines. So they don't. It's not a red, amber, green stop go criteria. It is a marketing brand guideline that we have followed from DFT in London. So it isn't telling you that you're where the submission, where the colour is green, that is a tick pass, or where it is red, that is a cross fail. It is simply following the brand guidelines.
Next question. Hello, it's not clear that the model makes bidders specify which assets are based at each base. The order seems to be choose assets by lot, choose bases by lot, and then the model runs. Does the model allocate asset types to the appropriate base, or am I missing something? So I think the question is, the model doesn't allocate assets to base, that's for the user to do, I presume, and I think the question is they're unclear on how you do that.
Yes, so it is for the user to allocate the asset to the base. That's done under the submission tab, and if we can hold that question to the end, I'll rerun the simulation tool demo on the submission page to see if that answers the question. I may not have spent enough time demonstrating the submission tab. So it is for the user to apply or add the asset to the base and to run the simulation. The model doesn't do that automatically, but I'll rerun that particular demonstration of the simulation tool once we've gone through the other questions.
Okay, thank you, John. I think the answer is yes. You allocate an asset to a base, but we will show you how to do that at the end. So next question. So Aberdeen is a default for 1 aircraft of each lot. I think, John, you've explained that. Although it is Aberdeen as a default, that's not saying that should be deemed that that's an appropriate base. We're base and agnostic, as we said, and as John touched on earlier. So I think we'll move on from that one. Do we have strict definitions for each field on model inputs? How do you ensure that all parties and manufacturers have same definition for fields such as cruising speed?
Yeah, okay. So no, that's a good question. If you can bear with me, as part of the instructions that you receive with your applications, now this is not my area of expertise, so I very much have to refer to my notes. Bear with me. Here we go. So as sort of in conjunction with the advice from our technical team, the the speed, or sorry, the data that is inputted according to the asset type should be the data that's associated with an IKO standard atmosphere at mean sea level on a still air day, which I believe conforms to IKO 7488-Charlie Delta. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't sufficiently, I'll probably have to take that one offline and get or ask the tech team to elaborate a little further, because other than what I've just read out verbatim, that is beyond my understanding or my expertise.
Lot 3 is less rich in data than Lot 1 and Lot 2. On the green summary sheets, how is this taken into account? In addition, for Lot 3, how are non-MCA taskings catered for? Is this not in the historic data? So I think there's two questions there for you, John.
Yeah, there are. So with the current aerial surveillance program being so new, and the start date of the data modeling project itself, we haven't included any historical surveillance data. So we've applied some numerous assumptions based on rotary wing activity and the intended ASV future activity to enable the data model to allocate an aerial surveillance, a Lot 3 capability to an incident that might be appropriate for Lot 3 support. The non-MCA incidents are catered for in the modelling perspective, same way as MCA incidents. If the data model thinks, based on the assumptions that have been put into the code, that it is appropriate to have a surveillance aircraft support it, or a Lot 3 system support it, then it will apply Lot 3 as an assigned asset. Now, because this is not done on historical data, it is essentially a nascent or a new service. We have applied the assumptions that we believe are appropriate in order to provide us with the insights that the report is delivering.
Is there an automated optimization function, or do you just have to keep submitting attempts at a solution and manually comparing?
No, there is no automation function. So it is the tool has not been designed for us, the MCA, to tell you what your optimal solution is, and that's deliberate. We very much want you guys to work on it and tell us what it is you feel is your most appropriate solution. But the assumptions within the code itself are standard, of course, for all account holders, and are based on the insights gleaned from the previous activity prior to the development of the model itself.
Thanks, John. And I think it goes back to the point, John, doesn't it, that we're basin agnostic as well. So, you know, we're showing a picture of our demand for each lot, and it's up to you, it's up to the bidders to determine how they meet that demand based on their basin solution. And the model will show them how they're comparing.
Yeah, and just to go into a bit of the detail of the optimization. In phase 1, we used the k-means algorithm to identify the center point of clusters for the 10 base incident locations, and essentially the optimization of those incidents didn't necessarily put a base, move a base into an area that we that would be appropriate. For example, due to incident clusters, the maths was saying you want to locate your base in the middle of the water, half a mile offshore. So there were mathematical reasons why we didn't want an optimization function as well, because the maths wasn't appropriate and didn't differentiate between land and sea. So that there were technical reasons behind it as well as the requirement for you guys to tell us and not us to tell you as the developers of the model.
Next question. Can you clarify about the 3-year data set of incidents, please? Is it right they are fictitious or stroke synthetic, but based on reality? Sorry, based on reality is a reasonable prediction of the future.
So the synthetic incidents within the data model are generated from the historical data collected by HNCG. So in order to create a future year, in this case 2022, what we did was we analysed 2017, 18 and 19 real-time or real incidents through various codes and algorithms. We have created a synthetic set which is representative of the trends, the incident locations, types, durations of that 3-year period to forecast forward. Hopefully that answers the question.
Next question. Scenario 2 of the S-Sun is applicable to lot 2 and 3 and requires responding to a yachtsman at 200 nautical miles west of Galway. How is the model used to determine compliance to this scenario? Are bases in Northern Ireland or the Scottish Islands viable? So I think on that point, I think the basing, and as I said before, we're basin agnostic when it comes to that. And the scenario given, and John, please jump in here, is one scenario, but one scenario you have to still meet the demand required of the overall UK footprint and the demands shown in that as well. So that's one of the scenario examples where we wish you to talk about how you would respond to that particular scenario. But you must remember that there is other demand shown in the model which you'd have to meet as well. From that, I think that's correct, isn't it, John?
Yeah, that sounds correct to me. Yeah.
Next question. In the data, there is no indication of how much of a rescue involved a search element. The outcome is recorded, but how do we know how much of the task was search versus rescue? This affects lot 3 possibly more than lot 1 and lot 2.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Again, we can put this in I can demonstrate or show you the area of the fields within the response tab. There is within some of the tabular data a time on scene figure, which clearly tells us how much time the model is calculating the asset is spending on scene, again based on the historical activity. So there is an area in there. It might be easier on the first few occasions when using the model to identify that through the focus mode on the tabular tables within the response tab. But again, if required, I can show that after the simulation demonstration on submissions.
Next question. Will there be an opportunity for follow-up questions on data modelling once teams have had a period of access and usage of model? I think the answer to that is yes, John.
Yes, there is. So we have built in some time to essentially release patches. If there are additional, I'll call them errors, but if there are errors that are identified through use of multiple industry partners, then we do have some rework time to send patches out. So yes is the answer to that one.
Next question. Reference historical data. Clearly you have from UKSAR2G, but what about ASV data, especially relates to lot 3? I think you may have covered this, John, but just to make sure.
I think I've covered that. Yeah, it wasn't available at the commencement of this project, and so the assumptions had to be put in place instead.
I'm going to default on this question, but I'll give a brief answer. But maybe you may give a more thorough answer later. So, when used for tender evaluation, will the model be viewed as a pass-fail requirement, or will it receive a numerical score which aligned to a competitive position, i.e., first, second, third, etc.? if I can ask you to wait until we have the next session regards the evaluation, etc., of how we're going to look at going forwards, procurement documentation, etc., then that'll be the best place to discuss that particular element, if that's okay, John?
Yep, that sounds good to me.
How many taskings are attended by multiple assets from multiple bases, and does the simulation model have scenarios with multiple assets from multiple bases?
I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but the answer is yes. And within the map visual under the response tab, you can highlight the tooltip, and that will explain which assets, plural, have actually been tasked in order to support.
Okay, thank you, John. Next question, and you may want to respond to this offline, John. Is it possible to have an explanation and the formula driving metrics in the model?
Yes, I think is most likely the answer, but it would have to be done offline.
Okay, so we'll provide a response in the Q&A documentation.
Yes, I think that what I can do for everyone is potentially provide the verification and validation report, which was the independent quality assurance that was done on this.
Next question, reference the search only data. Is this just for lot 3 assets or all assets, i.e. was there historically a requirement during these tasks to conduct some sort of rescue if target located, albeit not required historically, and hence recorded as search only? Casualty may have been recovered by another SAR asset, etc.
So if a casualty was rescued by another asset, that would be classified as supported, not search only. So search only incidents have been classified where a search was conducted by an aircraft and/or a maritime vessel, and no casualty was located.
There are a lot of features in the green sheets. However, what elements are assessed that link to how a solution is costed and the business case for a solution? For example, one that needs investment in new bases and new assets. Well, I think the answer to that is we aren't assessing costings or business cases for a solution in the model itself. That will form part of the other elements of the ITT going forwards in terms of the financial aspects of it as well, and looking at how you build new infrastructure as well to support the service. So I think that's the answer I would give on that, John, unless you've got anything else to add.
No, I agree. Thanks, Neil.
Does the simulation model consider number of passengers and the split between those seated or stretchered?
No, it does consider the number of casualties, but it doesn't consider a split by seated or stretchered. Unfortunately, we do not currently have the data that differentiates seated from stretchered. So that is a known gap in our data, and it is being rectified through HMCG. So unfortunately, the answer is no, I'm afraid.
But we do give the number of passengers
yes.
or casualties to be rescued.
We have the number of casualties according to historical data, but not by stretcher or seat, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you, John. How do we know what you value for comparison purposes between our solutions?
I think that comes back to the previous question, or a previous question you answered a few moments ago. Does it not link to finance? Technical,
yeah, so I think that's I think if that's not the correct answer, please let us know. Is turnaround time or downtime between taskings a desirable metric that will be modelled? There
is an assumption in there, and it's based on the uptime by day and by night. So whatever your readiness state is, and currently it's 15 minutes and 45 minutes, sorry, by day and by night. That is put into the system and is used to confirm non-availability by day by night after an incident.
Okay, thank you, John. Is there any consideration given in the model to the effectiveness of the onboard sensors or the intelligence or of the intelligence sharing infrastructure?
the simple answer is no. We don't have a means by which we can measure that in the model.
Yeah. Thank you. Will there be a baseline set of flying hours, missions, and tasks provided by MCA per lot outside of this simulation model, so that bidders use a common set of assumptions to cost irrespective of their base location?
I believe that is the intention, and I'm working with the financial team to ensure that those baseline assumptions are appropriate.
Yeah, I think we're working to provide an hours per lot, and we've allowed for that, and that will form part of the financial aspect as well. Next question. What climatic and operational conditions are assumed in the tool for analysing range of missions? Well, I think you mentioned that in a previous one, John.
That was the verbatim ICAO standard atmospheres at sea level, or yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
I'll have to repeat that from the notebook, I'm afraid.
There has been talk about MCA covering oil and gas UK requirements as well as their national obligations. Has this moved forward? We are not looking to seek to cover oil and gas requirements, is the answer to that one. You mentioned that the MCA can see submissions. Is this for specific requested submissions or all? No. Industry may decide to run multiple simulations, which they may not want to declare as part of analysis. Yeah, no, that's understood. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. The MCA will not see any submission from an individual account until that individual submits it to the MCA, and they do not need to submit a response until they're invited to do so. So the answer is all submissions will remain strictly confidential to the individual account holder and nobody else. Another question, John, I think it might go back to a previous one you've answered. How do we know we have a good solution, especially if we are comparing solutions?
How do we know if we have a good solution? Yeah, yeah, I mean, we've touched on this with previous previous answers to other questions, but the model itself isn't going to provide a yes, no, or a green, red for areas. It will be used to support the evaluation process under the technical remit, and support the financial and the contractual as well, to a lesser extent.
Sorry, next question. Sorry if I missed this. When do you think users who have already applied will be allowed to access the tool?
Yeah, sorry, that was going to be my my next slide. So there are a couple of very minor issues in the report. We can't release it until until we've just ironed those out. However, there are numerous applications that have started that haven't had the documentation returned. So it's very much my intention to iron out the issues by the end or by close of play Friday, and send it out to those who have successfully returned all the information as required. So fingers crossed, it will be Friday.
Thank you. And I think I can then answer the next one, John. How will you validate inputted data with respect to aircraft helicopter performance? Do you intend to cross-check against aircraft and rotorcraft flight manuals to validate claim performance? Will you have access to the latest document sets from the OEMs? If not, how do you prevent inappropriate claims against aircraft helicopter performance? So what I'd say on that is this is just one tool to enable us to evaluate bids going forward. What we would also expect is that aside from this, you provide the data to show how your inputs are clarified, or can show that the inputs you've put into the data set are true and are what you're saying. And obviously you've got to take account of the SAR fit, etc., which goes back to the previous point about aircraft performance speeds, etc. The speed you put in should be associated with a fit for that aircraft. And rather than one standard metric to be used, obviously yourselves and the OEMs or vice versa will understand what aircraft fit you have, will enable you to understand your cruising speed when you put that into the model itself. So in simple terms, yes, we will be looking at other items other than just the model in terms of performance. And that would, the onus would be on yourselves to provide that data to us. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, John.
No, I think that covers it.
So next question, can you demonstrate again how a solution compares to the baseline and what the percentage values mean? I.e., is our solution better by X percentage, or we only meet X percent of tasks?
Yeah, I can add that in at the end if you wish. It may be easier for that individual to wait until the until they've created their application and their submissions, and then they run it through with the user guides and the tooltips. As a standalone assessment, but I can do it is the answer if that individual wishes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, John. Next question, does the data account for the phenomena of rescues being requested just because a base exists in that locality, e.g. time saving for CRT or RNLI?
I think the answer is most likely no. So it doesn't. There was no way of successfully applying a metric or an algorithm that basically confirmed that incidents happen in a certain location because a base is located there.
So what I would say add on that is that obviously when all tasks are requested through the ARCC, there's they have to go through a rigorous process before that service is launched, and that obviously takes account of the locality, etc. So anything we do is not based on the locality; it's based on the risk of life and to go save. So next question, John: if everything is based against the baseline model data, which itself is based upon current contract performance and statistics, are you not in danger of procuring exactly the same for 2G?
No, I don't believe we are. But based in considering the other questions that have touched on this area, the scoring criteria is heavily focused on the technical, the contractual, and the financial elements, and not specifically the model itself. This will be used as a complementary supporting tool, and as previously stated, it won't provide a green or a red tick or a cross. So it isn't there to overrule the other three important categories. This is very much supporting the evaluation process.
And just building on that point, for those of you who may not be aware of the previous procurement for SAR-H, it was quite input focused, so there's quite a lot of regarding radar performance, or certain performance of the aircraft, etc. We've now flipped that on its head, and we're effects based now, so it's over to yourselves to understand how you can deliver for us, being the experts, what we need. And so as you'll look from the requirements, and as you'll understand from last week, a lot of the way we're looking at now is effects based in delivery of the service. So I think that's quite a fundamental change from where we're with SAR-H. So no, I don't think we'll be procuring exactly what is the same as what was delivered under SAR-H.
Yeah, and in addition to that, specifically looking at the model itself, it has been developed in a way that allows us to compare how the current submission and a potential future submission would look against each other. However, it's worth noting that as sort of Neil's alluded to, what we're looking to see is the likely performance of a future model, and there are so many more factors in there, and therefore it's been the model's been designed to allow you and us to understand how you will perform or likely perform, and simply compare against the current configuration. It hasn't been designed to say that you are not as good as the current configuration or you are better. It is looking to see if you will deliver a acceptable response on a system basis.
Okay, thank you, John. At the recent technical Q&A, there was a statement regarding anti-icing that aircraft selection must be able to meet historic climatic conditions, i.e. temperatures and freezing points. Is this information included within the model?
There's no weather data within the model, I'm afraid. We considered Met data and it was discounted based on numerous factors, but no, the weather data is not included.
And I'd refer you back to the previous Q&A for the technical, because they did go into some detail regards icing and how they'd view that from an evaluation viewpoint. Next question. Does the tool measure concurrency? It was not obvious.
As in the number of concurrent tasks, I believe is the question.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, there is. If it wasn't obvious, I will go through it again. But we do have concurrent I believe we have concurrent tasking metrics. We certainly looked to develop them, and I'll double check my the work backlog to see if they're in there. If they're not, and memory has failed me here, I'll provide you with the rationale as to why they're not there, based on data quality and a few other bits. But I'll take that one away.
Okay, thank you, John. Next question. Is the historical results section in the submissions detail page a fixed data set for 2017 to 19 shared between all submissions, or is it a generated permutation based upon those years?
For 17, 18, 19, it's a shared data set for all submissions.
Yeah.
So that's looking specifically at the historical data.
Yeah. So it's not a generated permutation then, I think was the question.
It's not a generated permutation.
So reference the value. What I mean is the parameters you value. For example, to select an extreme comparison, do you value time to scene for one rotoring aircraft more than ability to get 3 rotoring aircraft to a site in less than 90 minutes? There are many nuanced comparisons which are difficult to build a solution that you would prefer.
Yeah, I believe that comes back to sort of alternative metrics that are going to be outlined in a further engagement event. Would you agree with that, Neil?
Yeah, that's fine. We can. Yeah. Next question. If we use transform edit in the Power BI model, can we access the underlying data sources? Also, can we extend our Power BI model if required?
Yes is the answer. When I showed you the export data, all of the CSV data files are exported and available. Once you have your Power BI or PBIX file and you open it in the desktop on your computer, you can edit that file as you see fit. However, it's worth remembering that the submission that is sent to the MCA during ITT will be based on the template that is provided. So we won't see any changes that you make. We will only be viewing it in the format that it's provided to you guys in.
Next question. If we previously applied on the initial issue of the tool, does the same access remain, or do we reapply?
They shouldn't need to reapply as long as they've provided all the information as requested in the application email. And again, it might have been sent to their junk folder. If they've returned that with the signed PSYOPs and data privacy notice, etc., then the application account application will be sent out most likely on Friday once we've ironed out just a few of the minor issues that exist within BI.
Yeah, so the ASV solution would naturally lend itself to a centrally based asset. Appreciating you are agnostic on this point. Requesting capability information based on performance at sea level would be extremely limiting. Would the MCA be prepared to reconsider this?
I don't see why not, in all honesty. So I'll take that question has come in. I'll take it away. I'll defer to the tech team for some advice, and then I'll come back to you. As previously stated, this is outside my area, so I'm certainly prepared to reconsider, and I'll take advice from our technical team.
How long will the model be available for bidders to use, and is there a plan to update the data as the procurement process advances?
So the tool itself will be available to all users up to the SQ phase, at which point those that are invited to tender will continue with their accounts, and those who aren't accounts will be turned off. That itself is approximately a 9-month period. Yeah, hopefully that answers it.
We were told last week that the technical requirements are being driven by the data model. So your answer to the question on more of the same doesn't ring true. We are now confused.
I think I've understood the question, and it's probably a terminology issue, communication issue. So within the data model itself, there were phases of activity. What I presented to you on screen is phase 2, which is the development of the simulation tool and the presentation of outputs through Power BI. Phase 1 of the data model was the analysis of historical incidents to provide the insights that were fed into the user requirements. So hopefully it's more. I think that it's a miscommunication of terminology. So phase 1 activities developed insights that fed the user requirements, and beyond that, phase 2, we have the simulation tool, and we have the Power BI report. If that doesn't scratch the itch, please re-ask the question further. Thank you.
There are several lesson requirements in concurrency, by the way. So I think that's just a point regarding concurrency, John.
Okay.
Take that on board. Is it fair that we could deliver a system with a poorer performance to the today system, but still acceptable, especially if it is cheaper per year?
I guess it depends what poorer performance is meant by, but in principle, for the question that you've asked, I think the answer is yes, in big handfuls. But it will very much depend on whether or not the poorer performance, as you've described it, meets the technical requirements from the SSUN, the financials, and so on and so forth.
So I think building that, one thing we would say is we're not seeking. This program is not seeking to provide a degradation service. That's not what we're seeking to do here. This is about replacing the service, but better meeting our demand as we see it now. So SAR-H was delivered under previous metrics, looking at it in a quite simplistic way. We've now got the data, as John has said, through the insights, which shows what our demand looks like. This is more about tailoring a solution to meet our demand going forwards. And this is why we're agnostic on basing an aircraft, that it may be delivered in a better way than it is today. But that's certainly not saying we expect a degradation in service as a result of that. Just to point that out.
Yeah, thanks, Neil.
Can assets base data be transferred between company staff, or does each individual have to upload the same scenario data? So I think this is to do about user access, John. And
yeah, so really what you could have as an organisation is one user uploading the information or the data as your organisation requires, downloading the data as demonstrated to upload to your company network. And once it's on your company network, not knowing the infrastructure, but a reasonable assumption is that at that point it can be shared amongst teams that share the same access, the same data access. So once it's been exported from the simulation tool, that's the Java scripting tool, and uploaded to your company network, at that point you should be able to share it, but that will depend on your company's IT, I think is the simplest way to put that.
Sorry, John, one more question just come in. Do the historical data inputs account for all demand or purely the attended responded tasks? i.e., is this a true reflection of total demand or purely a comparison versus existing system performance?
So the data, the historical data provides us with an understanding of all incidents that were supported and completed fully, as well as incidents that were supported with a reduced service because the ARCC stood the aircraft down either on scene, en route, or on the ground itself.
So I think what the answer is yes, it's a true reflection of our demand.
Yes.
I think that's it, John.
Excellent. Well, I'll start to change screens around and go back to the simulation tool for those that are staying on. But other than that, thank you very much for joining, and I'm sure I'll speak to you all again soon. Thank you. Right, well, we still have quite a few listening in, so I'm just going to run through the question. Neil, I think it was quite near the top of the Q&A. I don't suppose you could quickly identify the question linked to asset and base allocation to submissions, just to remind everyone what the question was, please.
Yeah, and while I'm doing that, John, just one more question's come in.
Okay.
While I'm looking for that, can we access the underlying data if we open the Power BI transform edit?
Yes, you should be able to if you open it in the desktop, but you'll also have the CSV files available. So if I just change the screen, so when you export the data, you'll have your Power BI PBIX file, and then you'll have all the CSVs that are linked to that PBIX file as well. Within your data export. So yes is the answer, I hope.
Okay, so the question was, John, I think it was in relation to choosing an asset for a base, because it appeared that you chose your asset by lot, not by base. So I think it was just running through how you achieve that. So putting the asset to the base and the lot.
Yeah, so at the moment, I've selected one lot 1 asset, one lot 2 and one lot 3. So if I start on asset types, I think what the question might be getting to, potentially, I'm not sure, is whether or not there might be 2 different lot 1 assets or lot assets at a single base. If that's the case, then obviously add in the second asset for that given lot into the tool, and then when it comes to generating the submission, after you select whichever lot you're after, and labeled it appropriately, if you did have 2 different lot 1 assets, you would have their names within the asset type row against the base. And then it would be for you to select that asset type itself. Once you've run through all of that according to whatever your configuration is, you submit. So that would allow you any of your asset types that you've uploaded, however numerous your options may be, you allocate to the base. According to the base that you wish, which is either one of the defaults or another, as you see fit, and then submit. In it goes, and you can see the demo from earlier has finished running, and the new one that I've put in has just been submitted. I don't know if that answers the question sufficiently for that individual, but that is how the tool works. So
yeah, I think the question was, John, as well. I think it was about the allocation of assets to a base, and then does the model allocate asset types to the appropriate base? I think the answer is it doesn't allocate asset types to the appropriate base. You allocate the asset to the base.
You allocate the asset. It's for you to decide what is appropriate, not for the MCA.
Yeah, and I think they made that. I think it may be that they didn't see that element. But thank you, John. Hopefully that's made it clear for the
Okay, excellent. Now, I believe there was another question which was linked to Power BI reports. So I think we were looking at statistics? Sorry, bear with me as I try to remind myself what in focus mode. So I think somebody was interested in time spent on scene according to the model. So you can find that in the response tab, in the detailed tab, and simply under instant detail and focus mode, where you get the tabular response with all the details, and time on scene is at the far right hand side of that table. Hopefully that answers the second question that I made a note of.
If we transform edit in the Power BI model, can we access the underlying data sources? Also, can we extend our Power BI model if required?
Yes, so in your simulation tool, you've got your data export, which you download. That goes into your download file. I've pre-downloaded it to keep things on the same screen. So where you get your exported folder, which is this one here in the bottom left, you have your CSVs, you have your Power BI, PBIX file, and your user guide. Because I'm doing this from a Mac today, I can't open the PBIX file. But once you open that on your system, assuming you have the appropriate licenses, you can extend that further. But if you do that, please remember that when you submit, if you're invited to submit, we, the MCA, will only see the baseline dashboard. We won't see the additional changes that you have made. So that would be for your additional analysis only, and won't form part of the MCA's evaluation process when it commences.
Okay, thank you, John. Just final question. Can you show how the lot-free police assistance and hospital transfers is assessed? Since UAS would not transfer people, hospitals is not applicable. What about police?
In terms of the information that we have, the questions to do with?
So I think this is more about transfers of people, and it's asking around police. But I think if we're talking about transfer of personnel, that wouldn't form part of lot 3. That would be coming under your lot 1 or your lot 2 solution, I presume. So I think it might be about talking about transfer of people. If I'm wrong. But police is resulting in assistance to searches, John. If I'm wrong, please let me know.
It is assistance of searches. It's not looking at transfer of personnel, but the transfer of personnel is something that is completed on a very limited basis, and so from an evaluation point of view, the agency will be looking to understand if you're able to support, and that will be potentially a heavier lift capability versus a lighter lift capability. But that would be my individual assessment, not the MCA's assessment. So when we come to assess against transfer, it will be done by the technical team, and really what they'll be looking to understand through the model is more the baseline deployment capabilities, where we have the casualty capacity numbers by the assets themselves, I believe. But as we've alluded to already, the assessment metrics will be confirmed in a separate engagement event. Neil, if there are no further questions, I'll look to end the webinar now.
All right, sorry, John. Last few, and then we'll call it there, because I know we've got on longer than we wanted to. But good questions coming in. Thank you very much for the engagement. Just to double check, the aircraft choice first, then base. Should it not be base then type of aircraft, as the location influences the type of aircraft?
We went for the input of the assets that you believe you want to use, and the base locations, and then apply the assets to the bases. The model doesn't different. It's not.
So I think the question is, you know, from a user point of view, would it be better to start with location and they put a location in and then assign the assets to the location to understand what the picture looks like? And currently, the way I believe it's working is you put the assets first, then the base. I think that's the question.
To be honest, it doesn't matter. So if you know, if I'm understanding the question correctly, you can put the bases in first and then the asset types, but you're not going to get a submission until you apply asset types to bases.
Okay,
it has nothing to the maths has nothing to run against in the background.
Okay. And another question, which I think we'll take offline, John, just regards hospital transfers and police. They're saying it shows on one of the scorecards. So well, we'll take that offline and have a look at that for you and provide an answer back.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I think as Neil said, we have gone on for longer than the allotted time. There's still a few individuals on, but hopefully we've provided a reasonable overview for phase 2 of the data modeling, which is the simulation tool and the Power BI report, and best practice for use of the whole package. I'll do my best to ensure that it is available for those that have completed the application paperwork by the end of Friday, and those in the accounts will be sent out by the UKSAR2G@vivace.tech email account. So I've said it already, but please check your junk email accounts, because no doubt some of the filters will have sent that email into that folder. But other than that, all the information will be made available on the government website in due course, which will include a transcript of the Q&A that we've done so far today. But thank you very much for your time, and I'll now close off the webinar. Have a good day.